Red meat on. Red meat on. Yes, on.
The committee will come to order. Without objection, the gentleman from Georgia, Mike Collins, is authorized to participate in the hearings and ask questions. Good morning and welcome to the third hearing of the House Ways and Means Committee in the new Republican majority. Thank you to NACO for hosting us today at their wonderful facility. The small businesses across Georgia and the United States have been battling on the front lines of the Biden economy for the past 2 years. Historic inflation, higher interest rates, and help wanted signs have come to define life in America for millions of people and businesses. For a lot of folks in this room, it feels like Washington has forgotten about them. We need to prioritize the families, the farmers, and small businesses who build, feed, fuel, and power our nation. Since President Biden took office, the average American household has lost $10,000 due to higher prices on everything from food to gas to clothes. Real wages are down 3.5%. And for working class families, it means choosing between gas in your car and food on your table. Here in Georgia, gas prices alone have increased by over 50%, rising from just $2.16 in January of 2021 to over $3.38 today. 64% of Americans are now living paycheck to paycheck. For a record 24 straight months, inflation-adjusted wages are down. Labor force participation still has not caught up to where it was before the pandemic. High interest rates are making it harder for small businesses to expand, invest, and create jobs. President Biden's proposed $4.7 trillion in new taxes is not the solution. Welfare for the wealthy and job-killing green energy regulations are not the solution either. The best investment Congress can make is in the American worker and small businesses. And that is where we are focused today. Our witnesses joining us today are Allison Couch, a mother of two and the owner of Ignite Accounting and Business Advisors, David Bergman, president of NACO and our host today, Lisa Winton, CEO of Winton Machine Company, whose products have been used in the manufacturing of everything from refrigerators to the Mars rover. Matt Livingston, a community leader and owner of Coach's Bar and Grill. And Rachel Shanklin, Georgia Director and National Women's Entrepreneurship Director for Small Businesses, Majority, and an advocate on behalf of communities here in Georgia. These individuals know firsthand the problems America is facing, and more importantly, can help us find solutions. We have seen here in Georgia how good policies deliver good paying jobs. In 2017, after Republicans passed middle and low income tax relief, along with pro-growth tax policies and the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, Georgia Power was able to pass along $1.2 billion in benefits to its customers, lowering energy costs for millions of Georgians. Businesses of all sizes were able to hire new employees, expand, raise employee pay, and in some cases, double their benefits. Every income group in Georgia received a tax cut. Every income group in this state received a tax cut because of the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, with your average family of four saving at least $2,000. Now, some of the very provisions of that law, which help the businesses in front of us today expand and invest, hire, and grow, are facing the threat of expiration. Letting that happen would make the current pain of the Biden economy for workers and families, small businesses, that much more worse. These field hearings are meant to be as inclusive for everyone who wants to participate. For those of you who are not formal witnesses, this committee wants to hear from you about what we can do to make life easier for families and businesses like yours. We've provided a notebook for everyone in the audience that will be inserted into the record for this hearing. We ask that you share your insights, and that will be passed around throughout the hearing. And I want to thank you all for being here today, and especially thanks to our witnesses for taking time out of your busy schedule, time away from your family, to be here today to share for the American people and to the members of this Congress. I'm pleased to recognize the gentle lady from Washington State, Ms. Del Bene, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Representative Ferguson for hosting us in your district today. It's great to be in Georgia to discuss how we continue to help families, small businesses, and our overall economy. We know that the best way to strengthen and grow our economy is to grow the middle class. And that's what Democrats on this committee and in the House did last Congress. We were faced with a dire economic situation from the pandemic, and we successfully created jobs and worked to tackle inflation. Ways and Means Democrats made historic investments in creating more domestic manufacturing, lowering health care and energy costs, and increasing opportunities for small business owners. Right here in Georgia, millions of working families are currently eligible for the Inflation Reduction Act's rebates for energy-efficient appliances, lowering their energy bills and putting money back in their pockets. I'm a strong supporter of the child tax credit, a proven tool that lifts children out of poverty and grows the middle class. The American Rescue Plan included a one-year expansion of the child tax credit. 2.1 million children received the enhanced child tax credit, totaling over $3.26 billion in their parents' pockets. That meant it was easier for them to put healthy food on the table, keep a roof over their families' heads, and pay their bills. In just a few months, this program helped cut childhood poverty nearly in half. Name another program that's had this kind of impact so quickly. I've talked to countless parents about the child tax credit, and many tell me it's simply provided economic stability and more than a little bit of a peace of mind. As a mother, I understand how much this means when you're raising a child. The impact of Democrats' economic plan is in the data. 236,000 jobs were created in March. 236,000 jobs were created in March. Over 12 million jobs have been created over the past 2 years. The unemployment rate is down to 3.5%. Real GDP increased at an annual rate of 2.6% in the fourth quarter of 2022 and 3.2% in the third quarter. But all that work is now under threat by House Republicans. Let me be clear, the greatest threat to economic security of Georgians and families across the South right now is Republicans' extreme policies. This week, Speaker McCarthy finally unveiled his so-called plan to raise the debt ceiling. This bill would kill thousands of jobs, gut programs families rely on, accelerate the climate crisis, and undo much of the progress over the last 2 years. Meanwhile, President Biden's plan would make the investments we need in our future while cutting the deficit by nearly $3 trillion over the next decade. The right way to avoid a default is to pass a clean debt ceiling increase. My colleagues and I are open to finding a bipartisan path forward on funding the government and lowering the deficit. But we've also been clear, and we can't have these discussions if Republicans are going to hold our economy hostage. There is a bipartisan path forward on growing our economy and on growing the middle class. Something that's been one of my top priorities that I think Democrats and Republicans alike are supportive of is increasing the availability of affordable housing. The lack of affordable housing is a problem that I consistently hear about as I travel across the country. Over 17 million households are spending more than half of their income on rent. That's not sustainable when they're paying other bills, when they have the other bills to pay like groceries or utilities and health care. We have a proven effective tool in the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC. LIHTC is our country's most successful affordable housing program and has created over 3.5 million affordable homes since its creation. But we know it can do more. That's why I champion the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, along with many of my Republican colleagues, to build more affordable housing by expanding and enhancing the credit. My bipartisan bicameral bill has had over 207 co-sponsors last Congress, many who are members of this committee. It would create an estimated 2 million more affordable homes over the next decade. Nearly 152,000 of them would be right here in Georgia. That's the kind of bipartisan issue Americans want to see us address. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. I look forward to our discussion, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. DelBene. I'm pleased to recognize the gentleman from Georgia, from the great state of Georgia, Mr. Dr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses for being here today. I also want to thank David Bergman especially for hosting us here at NACO. And I saw Mayor Kim Leonard earlier. Mayor, thank you for welcoming us to your city. Georgia is a special place, and this community is a special community within a great state. And one of the things that I have found as being not only a lifelong resident here, but a member of Congress, is that this area has a way of overcoming what Washington puts in its way. We've seen time and time again policies that come from D.C. that impact our small business community, impact our agriculture community, impact our manufacturing facilities, and they hurt Georgians. One of the things that I hope that will happen today is that we will hear very candid testimony from the impacts on your businesses and your employees' lives and what the future holds for you with the policies that have been passed. I'm going to start with a very large company that's in this area, and that is Kia Motors. This area, state of Georgia, has made billions of dollars of investments in new automotive manufacturing, electric vehicles, and the batteries to go with them. And yet the policies from this administration are going to destroy the very jobs that they claim that they're going to be promoting with a tax incentive for for electric vehicles that is very perverse. And it hurts manufacturers that are in this state and in this region. But more importantly, when you start to hurt the larger manufacturers in this area, it trickles down to the small businesses. I can tell you, without a strong manufacturing backbone and without continued investment and continued employment, small businesses will continue to suffer. We need what we had just a few years ago, which is a growing economy that includes everybody, where we see wage growth across all sectors, where we see lower taxes across all sectors, and where we see inflation not destroying the very gains that we've made. We need policies that put Americans back to work, not simply give them a handout. Small businesses cannot compete with the federal government for jobs. These are small businesses in rural communities that are providing jobs and investment that our communities so desperately need. I'll say it again. When we see policies that come out of Washington, D.C. that gut manufacturing in an area, it creates a trickle-down effect where we lose continuity of our communities. We see generations of workers leave. We see capital investment go away. And in many cases in rural areas, we see nothing but desperation instead of hope. Again, I'm proud to represent an area that's found a way to overcome Washington, D.C. And I'm proud to represent small businesses and innovators that find a way to put people to work despite the headwinds. But that can only last so long. If we continue to go down the path where we're raising taxes on our small businesses, where we are disincentivizing people to go to work, and we continue to make America less productive, these small businesses will close. So we're here to hear from you about what is happening in your daily lives as an employer, and we want to know what the future looks like if we don't correct course. This is an amazing state again. It's an amazing community. Thank you for your willingness to be here. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson, for welcoming us to your congressional district. I'd like to recognize Mr. Collins, also from Georgia and adopted to the committee for this hearing, for his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you for allowing me to attend and to be a part of this hearing. You know, it's a special day for me personally. I've only been in Congress, y'all, for 104 days now. But there's two unique things now sitting here today. First of all, I am second generation Collins in Congress. You just so happen to be sitting in the heart of my dad's old district in Peachtree City here, where he served on the House Ways and Means Committee for 10 of his 12 years. So there's a little bit of a personal special day for me here. For those of you who may not know, I am in the trucking business. My wife and I have been in it for over 30 years now. We started our own trucking company. Sometimes I feel like that maybe I shouldn't be over here, maybe I should be over there on the witness side, because I have felt the pain of what many people are feeling now as our third generation now runs our company. I don't think people today, many of them don't understand the details necessarily of what they feel or what they actually see, other than maybe their paycheck or their dollars not going as far. But I guarantee you one thing. They understand what it meant when President Donald Trump said that you are never going to get tired of winning. And they see that now. Y'all, we don't have a tax problem in this country. We got a spending problem. We got a spending problem in Washington, D.C. We have got an administration that has taken us from energy independent and pushed us back over to an energy dependency where we are buying our oil from our people that want to kill us, from our enemies. That has driven up the price of oil and fuel, and the taxpayers are paying more. It's one of the big reasons we got inflation in this country. We've got supply chain issues. I know them firsthand. We passed an infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion. $592 billion of it went to fix roads and bridges. The rest of it went to some Green New Deal. That didn't do anything for the congestion on 285, I can assure you that. And they can put all the EVs out there they want, but they're not going to get anywhere because they're going to be parked with us. We also have a workforce problem. We need to get people back to work. We had a great welfare reform bill that was passed in the 90s, and it's been watered down since, and we need to get that back. And we also have a country called China that we need to get under control, stealing our intellectual properties, making influences in our education and our universities, and we need to take care of that too. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you having me. I look forward to hearing from the witnesses myself, and I yield back the remainder of my time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. We will now proceed to the witnesses. Miss Allison Couch, she is the owner of Ignite Accounting and Business Advisors. Mr. David Bergman is the founder and president of NACO, as well as our gracious host today. We have Miss Lisa Winton, is the founder and CEO of Winton Machine Company. We have Mr. Matt Livingston, is the owner of Coach's Bar and Grill. And we have Miss Rachel Shanklin, is the Georgia Director and National Women's Entrepreneurship Director for the Small Business Majority. The committee has received your written statements, and they will all be made part of the formal hearing today. I also want to let others in attendance know again that they too may provide a written statement. Please find the clipboards and forms available in the back, and your statements will also be added to the official record. Now for our guest. Each of you have 5 minutes to deliver your oral remarks. And Miss Couch, we may begin when you're ready.
Morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Good morning, Chairman Smith and members of the Ways and Means Committee. Okay. Is that better? Okay. Good morning, Chairman Smith and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Allison Couch. I'm the president of Ignite Accounting and Business Advisors. Thank you for inviting me to your hearing today to provide real-world testimony on crucial issues before you. My firm is a small business that nurtures other small businesses. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary and the completion of tax day this week. I currently employ 9 women on staff and serve over 200 clients. Our services include bookkeeping, financial statement preparation, sales tax, payroll tax, property tax, and income tax. We advise our clients also. This starts with a listening ear and often ends with an encouraging word. I have found a great way to describe being a small business owner is correlating it to raising a child. You are nervous to start, you make a lot of mistakes, never give up, experience moments of immense pride and immense heartbreak. I will never forget March of 2020 when the nation began closing down in reaction to COVID. I sat on my back porch in my pajamas because there was no time to get properly dressed from sunup to sundown for weeks, walking clients through PPP, EIDL, exploring new ways to generate revenue, how to navigate employees working from home, and more. Oftentimes, these conversations were had with shaky voices and tears of worry that they would lose their business baby. We are also thankful to be beyond the days of COVID, but let's not be so naive to think that the effects of it are gone. We continue to see a diminished workforce, supply chain issues, and now incredible inflation. I have been forced to give my staff up to 40% raises and have advised many of my clients to do the same. Our software costs continue to rise, along with recent hikes in rent, insurance, hardware prices, and more. However, one tax provision that has continued to truly help small business in a huge way has been the Qualified Business Income Deduction, Section 199A. This deduction is part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 and is set to wind down in less than 3 years. I am here today to ask you on behalf of hardworking, small business owning Americans to extend the TCJA of 2017 for many reasons, but most importantly for the small business deduction. The tax burden is already incredibly heavy on small businesses, and this deduction has been in place for so many years now. To allow it to go away will not feel like a sunset, but like a tax increase. My clients are taking the money they are saving with this deduction and investing it into salaries, equipment, and expansion, which translates into investing into the economy. While there is never a good time to increase taxes on business income, doing so now would be especially problematic. The proposal to add a 5% surtax on business income does not close a loophole, but it would limit the ability of small businesses to invest in their employees and in their operations. Business income is different from business owner's income. While it is reported on the owner's individual Form 1040, that income does not go into their pocket. It is plowed back into the business for investment in employees, working capital, and rainy day funds, which may be crucial if the economy slips into a recession. They will not be able to do this if the money is sucked up by a taxing authority. In mentioning taxing authorities, I would like to make you aware of some issues occurring with the ultimate taxing authority for our nation, and that is the Internal Revenue Service. Frustration from clients in paying taxes is real and prevalent. However, frustration from not being able to make contact with the imposer of the tax is difficult to keep at bay for us taxpayer preparers. The IRS continues to close their phone lines, have extensive wait times, and long backlogs. To add insult to injury, the idea of funding this agency with $80 billion additional dollars to perform audits, which add to all of their existing problems, before the current backlogs are cleared out and current calls are handled in a timely manner, is preposterous. I am here today to ask you to not additionally fund the IRS with $80 billion to predominantly be earmarked for audits and increased enforcement. Another item I would like to have reviewed by you is the $600 threshold the IRS imposes on small business owners for reporting subcontract labor on a 1099 NEC form. This threshold has not been changed since the 1970s. The burden of this reporting requirement places on small business owners is great. The amount, at a minimum, should have a one-time adjustment for inflation for all of the years in which it has never been adjusted, and then it should be adjusted annually. The IRS adjusts tax brackets, credit limits, mileage rates, and exclusion amounts every year. This hasn't been adjusted in at least 25 years. The forthcoming expansion of Form 1099-K reporting doubles down on this low threshold and could further complicate tax preparation, requiring more reconciliation of paperwork. I am here today to ask you to review this issue and consider an adjustment. Thank you for your time and engagement today. Please know that you hold the power to help us. We need your representation now more than ever.
Thank you, Mrs. Couch. Mr. Bergman, you are recognized.
Good morning. My name is David Bergman. I'm the president and owner of NACO, and we'd like to welcome Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Del Bene, the committee and your staffs, and our very own Representative Drew Ferguson and his staff. I also want to recognize the NACO team who made this event happen. Back in 1999, my wife and I were at a crossroads. Together with our 3-year-old son, we had recently built a home and moved here to Peachtree City, but then I was told my job was going away. We were happy here, so rather than move again, we made a plan to start this business. Starting on our kitchen table, we had no customers. To pay the bills, I found a new job, and while I slowly built this business, I commuted up to 5 hours a day. I burned a lot of vacation days to build business relationships. My wife stayed home to build the family and mind the store. After 5 years, I could finally work full-time for myself, and we've never looked back. In 2006, we hired our first full-time employee, who's still with us. Our team now has 45 fantastic people, and they have good pay, good benefits, and flexible work schedules. The 3-year-old son is now NACO's materials scientist. Today, we are a major worldwide supplier of products used to safely control electrical power. We are a unique industry that combines materials science with modern manufacturing. We've been growing. We built this addition in 2019, and we've quadrupled the production from here. Team Ferguson has always been very supportive, and this is your third visit to us. Thank you. For aerospace, we make thousands of assemblies right here that look like this. And using these parts, our aerospace customers make switches, relays, and circuit breakers. Sophisticated devices that look like this are used throughout the airplane, from the cockpit to the flight controls. When this committee flies home, you're going to be surrounded by our parts. In our transportation segment, we make thousands of sub-assemblies behind that wall that look like this. Our customer then produces vital relays that look like this. These relays control train signaling, control traffic, and grade crossings. So the next time you're waiting for a train, think of us. When we're not making aerospace, railway, or industrial parts, our talented and skilled workers are making medical parts that help pediatric and adult patients recover from severe orthopedic injuries. Now on to policy topics. The 2018 China tariffs didn't impact us directly, but we saw that they did trigger a ramp-up of materials costs that's now fueled by geopolitical problems, trade policies, and supply chain shortages. Our costs are up over 20%. I feel today's main inflation driver is workforce shortages. Mineral reports show there's plenty of raw material available. But from industrial capacity to logistics to workforce, everything seems in short supply. For a business our size, we have an unusually ambitious R&D program. For me, it's important to leverage our position and be an innovator. We're working with the Department of Energy, national labs, and Georgia's own universities to make important, game-changing breakthroughs in the materials used in our products. As I paid my taxes this week, I was stunned to learn that the revised R&D tax credit no longer made sense for us. Restoring the tax treatment of R&D expenses would help us and would help thousands of other U.S. innovators. I'm glad to see the committee is interested in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Every piece of job-creating equipment in this room was purchased taking advantage of accelerated depreciation. Industrial customers won't order from you unless you already have the existing capacity and machinery. So growing manufacturers like us take a gamble, and we buy these machines in the hopes that the business will come. After we pay for them, then there's installation, training, and workforce development. Getting up to full speed can take months or even years, and meanwhile, we carry the cost of the equipment and the skilled labor. The great thing about Section 179 was it offset some of that early risk. Lastly, I want to point out that this building and this business would not exist if not for the GSP trade program. For 20 years, GSP eliminated tariffs on components from India. We used those savings to build export programs, to build this operation and hold off Chinese competition. However, since GSP ended, we now pay over $150,000 a year extra that we used to be reinvesting into this business. Since 2019, that's equal to about 4 or 5 of these machines. Worse still, the European Union kept their GSP program in place, so we've lost exports to Europe. Our export sales have fallen from 33% of total revenue down to under 20%. For many U.S. manufacturers like me, GSP is a big help to our global competitiveness. When GSP is renewed, including India, I can guarantee you help many U.S. companies grow and invest. I'm out of time. Thank you. Thank you for your service to America.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Ms. Winton, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Delbene, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for holding today's hearing on the state of the American economy. My name is Lisa Winton, and I am the CEO of Winton Machine Company. We are one of nearly 244,000 small manufacturers in America. My company designs, builds, and markets factory automation equipment that focuses on tubular components and coaxial cable assemblies. Our products touch the vast majority of households worldwide and have a growing impact on defense-related electronics. Our solutions are in everything from refrigerators to the Mars rover to the Iron Dome weapons system that is used to protect Israel. Our 40-person team does all the design and manufacturing in Suwanee, Georgia. 26 years ago, when we started our company, there was a lot more U.S. competitors than there are today. Most of our competitors, as witnessed firsthand at a trade show in 2022, primarily come from Europe and Asia. Like many manufacturing leaders, I am active in my community, treat my employees fairly, and believe that anything is possible in America. And I know that when manufacturing is strong, America is strong. Many policies directly affect manufacturers' competitiveness. Right now, I'd like to focus on some pressing tax issues. A competitive tax system is important to manufacturers. In the year following passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, Winton Machine saw a 49% increase in sales, 53% increase in machinery shipments. We grew our overall labor payroll by nearly 150% and purchased a new American-made CNC machine that's right behind you today. Our entire industry kept our promises to hire new workers, raise wages and benefits, and invest in our communities. Today, my company, like many others, face serious challenges. Costs for everything have increased tremendously. Overhead costs are up 20% overall. Our hydraulic power supply that used to cost us $10,000 is $18,000 today. Lending costs have skyrocketed for our customers, and while I would like to double the size of my facility, the cost of doing so has risen fourfold over the last several years. As I detailed in my written testimony, 3 recent changes to the tax code unfortunately make these goals more difficult. And I simply believe we need to fix them so that we're not making it harder to do business in America. So, first, at the beginning of 2022, the maximum deduction for interest on business loans allowed under Section 163J of the tax code was narrowed from 30% of earnings before tax, interest, depreciation, and amortization to 30% of earnings before just interest and tax. Second, full expensing of capital investment of bonus depreciation began phasing out this year. The 100% deduction level declined to 80% and will be completely eliminated by 2027. That's the CPA version of it. Here's the simpler version. Both of these changes are like a tax on manufacturing growth. That's because manufacturing requires hard work, a skilled workforce, creativity, and machinery. I am very concerned that these changes will force our customers to keep using older pieces of equipment rather than purchasing newer or additional ones, or they will buy cheaper equipment from Asia or move more production offshore. The third recent change to the tax code makes it more expensive to perform research, which is how we develop life-changing products. One of Winton's core values is constantly improve, and this means investing in our people, products, and processes so that we offer the best innovative American-made solutions to our customers around the globe. For decades, we could immediately deduct 100% of our R&D expenses in the year they are incurred. But as of 2022, we can only recover a small portion of those costs each year. Meanwhile, China allows a super deduction for manufacturing R&D equal to 200% of research costs. That is what we are up against. And by the way, China isn't the only tough competitor. A few of our greatest competitors are actually in Italy. Now, there are even more damaging tax changes on the horizon. In 2025, the 20% pass-through deduction will expire at the same time tax rates for pass-through entities like ours go up across the board. And scheduled changes to the estate tax could make it difficult to pass down family-owned businesses without selling off part of our companies. None of these tax changes are fair to our employees, their families, and our communities. So, I am grateful to the members from both parties who have already introduced legislation to fix many of these issues. I am happy to go into greater detail, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Winton. Mr. Livingston, you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. My name is Matt Livingston. I'm a small businessman from a small town in West Point, Georgia, about an hour south of here. I'd like to start off by thanking all of you for the opportunity to express my concerns and my issues with you. I'm not sure anything that I could say will change the mind of those that believe this economy is thriving or it is the best it has ever been. Anyone that has those beliefs obviously has not been to our small town. I'm currently the owner of 2 businesses, one of which is Coach's Bar and Grill that was mentioned, a family restaurant that's been in business since 2016, and the other is Matthew Scott Homes, a construction company that builds custom homes that has been in business since 2020. From 2012 until 2022, I was blessed enough to own and operate 4 other restaurants. As mentioned, I now only have 1. We've been forced to close 3 of them due to several reasons. The first being labor in the restaurant industry, or should I say lack thereof. We've been forced on several occasions to shut the doors for a day or 2 to staff shortages. We had to permanently shut the doors on 3 and combine staff just to operate 1. We're facing times now where people just don't show up. Gone are the days as an employee when you were expected to show up on your scheduled day and to be on time, or the days when you could fire an employee for these actions. Since the workforce is so limited, we find ourselves letting this be okay. Turning a blind eye to the situation and allowing it to happen, which in return inhibits and promotes these actions to continue. Not only does a lack of labor cost your business daily revenue when you're not open, it costs a tremendous amount of money in payroll to train new employees, just to have them quit a few weeks later. Our turnover rate in the past years has been at an all-time high for us. We try to employ 30 people at Coach's. A few months ago, I mailed out 92 W-2 forms. Employees expect higher pay for less work. At the time you pay a normal rate for normal performance, they quit and say, I can make more staying at home. This is the mentality that needs to be changed. There's no concept of an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. We as small business owners must increase our compensation to entice people to work, all while paying more for goods to be sold, only to leave our menu prices the same. Which brings me to my next reason, the inflation. Inflation on the cost of goods sold for the past few years has had a significant impact on several items. We're paying outrageous prices for simple things as eggs, which in return increases the cost of every byproduct of that, mayonnaise, dressing, shortenings, etc. Other huge cost increases include beef, pork, chicken, seafood, produce, French fries, sugar, plastic, and resin products, and an abundance of other items. We're constantly having to change our menu prices just to keep our head above water. Our food cost has drastically gone from 28% to almost 40% just to keep from pricing ourselves out of business and having to close the doors to yet another restaurant. In return, we are lowering our profits to the point we are operating just to give the few that want to work a job. Our customers are suffering in return, paying more for menu items than they are accustomed to and living in a small town. Not only are labor and inflation a major concern, but the supply chain issues have also caused a major problem. The price of fuel has caused grocery suppliers to cut back on the days that they will deliver, which makes it tough to keep all your menu items in stock, as well as other menu items being difficult to get. We are a sports bar and sell an average of 17 to 20 cases of wings a week. We have been cut short to 10 cases a week because of the company's allocating wings due to all the shortages. These supply chain items are a major issue when the items of the majority are what are sold by us. Now changing lanes, not only has the restaurant business been a struggle, but our custom home construction business also has its own concerns. We don't have as many issues as the restaurant when it comes to employees because most of our contractors are 1099 workers. However, our contractors face staff shortages, which in return hurts us from being able to get jobs completed on time. Our main issues are inflation on materials and driving the rise of interest rates and causing fewer approved or interested buyers. The higher rates are pricing people out of current markets and causing higher mortgages. For every 0.5% rise in interest rates, home buyers' buying power drops 5%. So a homeowner that was approved for an average of $350,000 home and the interest rate goes up just 0.5%, their buying power dropped to $17,500. That may not seem much, but it hurts us in our cost-plus contracts. This scenario alone would shorten our profits by $3,500. We average 2 contracts a month, so annually we are talking $84,000 on just 0.5%. The supply chain issues in the construction world would have caused a significant amount of loss as well. Suppliers are having the same problems getting employees to load materials, drivers to deliver materials, and the cost of fuel for limiting them to only 1 day a week for delivery. We're having issues getting windows, doors, concrete, drywall supplies, electrical boxes, and especially meter cans. simple thing as meter cans, are 6 months to a year out, making it difficult to get permanent power turned on at these homes. In conclusion, we all face many challenges in a day's time, no matter what business we were in. We as Americans face a situation that has caused our cost of living to go up and our chance of living to go down. I can only pray that this will be short-lived and we can give our children an opportunity to be proud to be an American as we once all were. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. God bless America.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Ms. Shanklin, you're recognized.
Can you all hear me? Okay. Dear Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Del Benet, and members of the committee, my name is Rachel Shanklin, and I am the Georgia Director and National Women's Entrepreneurship Director for Small Business Majority, a national small business organization that empowers America's diverse entrepreneurs to build a thriving and equitable economy. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today on the importance of promoting entrepreneurship as the foundation of our economy, particularly for Georgia's 1.2 million small businesses. It's no secret that small businesses have had a tumultuous experience over the last 3 years. The pandemic has underscored how the government can play a role in supporting the small business ecosystem. There are several policy solutions that have helped small businesses navigate the challenges brought on by the pandemic. The first is the CARES Act, which allocated billions of dollars through the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. While some of these federal relief programs had programmatic issues, we've heard from countless small businesses that it helped keep their doors open. The American Rescue Plan included several provisions essential to small business survival, particularly grants for the hardest hit small businesses. The plan also allocated funding to reauthorize the State Small Business Credit Initiative, a program that will support new small business lending and technical assistance. In addition, the ARP expanded the federal earned income tax credit for private sector workers without children for 1 year. The Inflation Reduction Act is another recently enacted policy that extended the ACA's premium subsidies through 2025, ensuring that premium costs remain low and that sole proprietors, who make up a large share of marketplace enrollees, can access affordable coverage for themselves and their families. In addition, the Act measures to level the playing field through several important tax policies. To foster an inclusive small business community, we must build on this progress and enact measures that will create a level playing field for Georgia's small businesses. This includes enacting fair and equitable tax policies, such as the Biden administration's proposal to increase investments to support critical programs and reduce the deficit by increasing the top marginal tax rate on the very wealthy. Only 2% of businesses with pass-through income pay at the top marginal rate, and 2/3 of small businesses support raising the top rate to fund important programs. We urge policymakers to not extend Section 199A tax deductions established by the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. While this provision allows businesses to deduct 20% of pass-through business income, almost 70% of the total 199A benefit flows to approximately 4% of pass-through businesses. The next solution is to establish an earned income tax credit in Georgia. This would bolster the economic security of low to moderate income entrepreneurs and small business employees. This is really important to Georgia's economic success because the majority of small businesses are solo enterprises, and the median income for self-employed individuals at their own unincorporated firms was just $25,064 in 2018, according to the U.S. Small Business Administration. Next, we urge you to make the expanded child tax credit permanent. This can reduce the financial burden on working families with children, which would increase disposable income that can be spent on goods and services provided by small businesses. This can in turn boost economic growth and stimulate job creation. A robust benefits infrastructure means access to affordable health care, paid family and medical leave, and child care. Without these support structures, small businesses cannot properly compete or contribute to their local and state economies in a meaningful way. The following recommendations are ways to ensure small businesses can offer quality jobs and essential benefits. We recommend extending Medicare pharmaceutical drug inflation rebates that were made available under the Inflation Reduction Act to the private market, which penalizes drug manufacturers for raising prices faster than inflation. We also encourage Georgia lawmakers to expand Medicaid eligibility. Closing Georgia's coverage gap would extend health insurance to more than 500,000 Georgians and create 56,000 jobs. We must also make the premium assistance provided by the Inflation Reduction Act permanent, which has increased healthcare affordability for many entrepreneurs and Georgians alike. We need a national paid family and medical leave policy to support small businesses that don't have the resources to provide robust benefits. In the absence of a national program, Georgia must establish a state-run program that would allow small business employees and the self-employed to access paid leave. Lastly, policymakers must implement policies at the national and state level that would help working parents access affordable and quality child care, understanding that this benefit is essential to retaining a skilled workforce. In closing, small businesses need a modernized and robust benefits infrastructure that promotes wealth creation, financial security, and quality jobs. These policies are clear examples of programs that are essential to supporting small businesses and helping compete with larger businesses. We encourage policymakers to consider policies that will empower entrepreneurs to build a thriving and equitable economy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Shanklin. Thank all the witnesses, and now we'll proceed to question and answers. First off, extreme policies definitely affects all working class families, small businesses, and farmers. Some of the extreme policies that our counterparts, the Democrats, have proposed include Medicare for all. Medicare for all would bankrupt Medicare as we know it. It would cost $32 trillion. And to put that into numbers that normal Americans might be able to understand what $32 trillion is if you spent $43 million a day since Jesus Christ was born. That's $32 trillion, and that's a proposal that the House Democrats have to bankrupt Medicare for Social Securities. Those extreme policies are the policies that hurt working class Americans. The Green New Deal would end farming as we know it. That costs $90 trillion according to economists. For everyday American, that is spending $121 million every day since Jesus Christ was born. Those are extreme policies. Those are the policies that will bankrupt this nation. Those are the policies that will hurt working class families, small businesses, and farmers. And those are the policies that myself, as chairman of this committee, will never allow to happen. I will also say that $3 trillion in tax increases on small businesses is supported by the other side by expiration of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Several of you testified about how beneficial they will be. If they expire, it will increase your taxes $3 trillion. So I appreciate the testimony. And also, we don't support defunding the police. Last year was the first year when U.S. businesses faced limitations in the amount of research and development cost they could deduct. It was also the first year where business interest deductions were more strictly limited. Tax reform's 100% expensing provision was a major issue of investment and growth. Unfortunately, starting this year, that expensing provision will begin phasing out. As we look to strengthen our supply chains and compete with China, I'm interested in how these provisions have affected your businesses. Can each of you please explain how R&D expensing, interest deductibility, or 100% expensing have impacted your operations? And would there be any detriment to your business if these provisions were not addressed by Congress? Ms. Couch, we'll begin with you.
Thank you. I'm going to touch on R&D amortization and how that has affected my business. I was developing an app that would help my clients, and had to seek out an investor to fund that the R&D regarding the research and development that went along with the app, and he was willing to do the investment because he was able to take the expense immediately against income in other businesses that he owned. And so I believe that amortization really limits investors to invest in companies and startups and research and development on technological innovation, and I believe R&D amortization really hurts innovation and entrepreneurship overall for our country.
Thank you. Ms. Couch, you also raised in your testimony, number 3, I believe, was in regards to the 1099-A, and you said that that limit of $600 has been around since
1970s. I'm not sure the exact year, but
there's been no changes from 1970s.
Correct. So the 1099 NEC right now, which is issued to subcontractors for their work, that began a $600 minimum threshold, and that still holds true today, and that needs to be raised.
Thank you. Mr. Bergman, how about R&D or expensing or interest deductibility? How would that affect you all?
Sure. Well, research and development is risky. When we conduct a research project, we do not know the outcome. It could be beneficial, it could yield, something that adds value, or it could be like setting fire to the money you invested. You just don't know. That's why they call it research. So, knowing that we can at least expense 100% of these dollars gives me some mitigation of the risk against my taxes. And for capital equipment, for purchasing capital equipment, of course, it's less risky, but there's still some risk. I mean, if you want to expand into something like robotics, well, it's a trial and error process, and you have no guarantee that that machine is going to be fully productive the time you turn it on. So being able to take some of that risk away in the first year as accelerated depreciation is an enabler of taking that kind of risk to grow.
Ms. Winton.
I can talk a long time about this, so I'll try to be as concise as possible. Starting with interest, I really appreciate the fact as a small company that I can purchase equipment and I can expense it because of the size of a company that I have. However, we have to talk about supply chain. I am just one cog in the wheel, and my customers are anywhere from a small mom-and-pop operation all the way to a multinational corporation. And so when you're talking R&D and you're talking interest expensing, I'm building capital equipment. I'm building that factory automation. So when my customers can't write off those expenses, then they're not necessarily going to buy that equipment. They're going to push it down the road because, especially if they're a public corporation, at the end of the day, they are responsible to their shareholders. And we're all shareholders. We all have 401ks. And I want to make sure that those companies are making a profit, because when they aren't, my 401k is going down and my employees' 401ks are going down. But at the same time, I need them to invest in that capital equipment so that they have state-of-the-art facilities. If any of you have ever gone to Mexico, you've gone to our borders, you've gone to other countries, those factories are all state-of-the-art. They're all factory automation. They're all equipped with robotics. It's not just here in the U.S. It's everywhere. So if we don't invest here in our R&D and our innovation, that's what sets us apart. That's what makes us America. And so companies have to have those incentives in order to buy that equipment and to invest in research and development.
Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, sir. Being a small restaurant owner and construction worker as I am, really don't have a whole lot of research and development that goes into our business. Along with that, any amount of our stuff that's taxed and that we pay as a small business, being small business owners, employ 50% of the American workforce. as we all are, two out of three of new jobs in the last 25 years have been given by small business owners, which in return, an increase on that would include pay cuts, price increases for our customers, and fewer growth opportunities for me as an owner. So with these guys that are talking the research and development ideas and all that, I am a firm believer in that needs to be part of our community. And like Mr. Ferguson said, Kia manufacturers there from our area. If those items don't go into effect and those type of businesses can't put forth effort in the research and development side of it to be able to grow more, then going back to small owners like me would hurt us. Losing community or losing manufacturing businesses and large-scale items like that dwindle down to hurt us. So if they can't put in what they need to be able to prosper and grow, it trickles down to somebody as small as me in a town my size.
Mr. Livingston, I know that you're a small business owner. You have one restaurant, is what you testified. You used to have a couple. Is your restaurant, is it a pass-through or a subchapter S or an LLC, or is it a C Corp?
It's an LLC.
LLC.
Yes, sir.
So being an LLC, 199A, which was testified by Ms. Couch and a few others, is a huge, huge tax incentive that expires in 2025 that would drastically affect your business, because let's say your competitor may be McDonald's, and it may be incorporated as a C corporation, and their tax rate would be 21%, but yours would be 39% if that expires. And I know restaurant owners have such a difficulty time, and they have such small margins. I hear that all the time from the gentleman from Oklahoma. Since he's a restaurant owner himself, or used to be. So would you say that 199A would be devastating if it expired for your small business?
Absolutely, for sure. Anything that's going to increase where we are, like you mentioned, our margin is so thin, and even now we're having, with just cost of goods going up so high, and being able to stay afloat and having to drop our menu prices, our profitability has dropped drastically. So anything that comes through that charges us more is devastating.
But that provision would benefit all the C Corporation restaurants.
100%.
If it expired, because then you would be out of business and they would have more business. So helping big business is not what we need to do in tax policy. Ms. Shanklin, do you have words on those three different items: interest deductibility, 100% expensing, and R&D?
So on the first two, I'll recuse myself, just not being a small business owner myself, but I will just say that our stance is that 199A tax provision helps the wealthy and should be targeted to the smallest businesses that are low to moderate income.
Ms. Shanklin, do you have suggestions of policies that would help make 199A better targeted towards small businesses?
I mean, when we think about low to moderate income entrepreneurs, which really are the folks in our network, we have about 85,000 small businesses nationally in our network. Majority of those have less than 10 employees or are solo entrepreneurs. So the way that we think about it, is looking at the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit, putting money back in the pockets so those can be allocated to spurring local economies. But I can definitely send some more information to the committee once I get back to the office.
I definitely would appreciate any suggestions. I don't know of a restaurant in this country that it has only 10 employees or less. And Mr. Livingston, how many employees do you have at your one restaurant?
Right now, 30. 30.
I would consider you a small business, and you should have the protections of 199A. So just a 10-member cap may not necessarily be a good definition of small business, but we need to figure it out to make sure that we don't lose that provision and that it best serves small businesses and our tax code does not benefit multinational corporations who are taxed at 21% and you're going to be taxed at 39%. With that, I would like to recognize Ms. Delbene for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank folks for highlighting the R&D amortization issue that was created by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I'm supportive of making a fix so that businesses can immediately deduct their R&D expenses. Actually, Democrats passed that fix out of the House in the Build Back Better legislation, and we introduced bipartisan legislation actually this week to fix that issue. That said, we have to do more as well. And address the needs of families that helps our small businesses and workers. We've seen the incredible impact of the expanded child tax credit. It cut child poverty in half the year it was implemented. When Republicans passed the $2 trillion tax bill, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they prioritized tax cuts for very wealthy individuals and for large corporations. And working families were left behind. After the TCJA, the child tax credit, at that time left out a third of all children from the full benefit. Specifically, children in the South were some of the most likely to be left behind, like in Georgia, where over 40% of children's families did not receive the full credit. Democrats fixed that in the American Rescue Plan by ensuring that families who need it the most could receive the tax credit, and in doing so, we cut child poverty in half. So restoring this expanded benefit is crucial to working families across this country, but definitely right here in the South. Ms. Shanklin, I was wondering if you could talk about, when you provide stability for families, the effects can be felt throughout the economy. And so I wondered if you could speak to the impact that the expanded child tax credit had on small businesses.
Sure, thank you, Congressman Delbene. So monthly child tax credit payments actually offset inflation costs for working families, working class families, and kept small businesses afloat. This child tax credit created jobs and encouraged entrepreneurship through several communities in Georgia. Support from these tax credits put more into local economies, which in turn increased economic activity to local businesses.
Thank you. We know also there's overwhelming bipartisan support for paid leave. I saw some folks in this room who came in strongly supportive of paid leave. Over 80% of voters support paid family and medical leave. In 2018, in my home state of Washington, the other corner of the country, we implemented a paid leave policy that enables employees to earn a minimum of 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 40 hours worked. Unfortunately, this policy is not the norm across the country. Ms. Shanklin, I wondered if you can share some insight into what paid leave is like here in Georgia.
Sure. Thank you for that question. So right now, Georgia does have a paid leave program that covers state employees and school employees. And that is only up to 3 weeks, which is not sufficient for a lot of parents to take paid leave. If folks are caregivers, you just never know what the circumstance may be. So it's not sufficient. And it also leaves out a huge sector of employers and employees that do not have the capacity or infrastructure to offer those types of essential benefits like paid time off, paid family leave, paternal leave, etc. Our research has found that, actually we did a 2021 Georgia poll of small businesses, that over half of small businesses in Georgia do support a state-run paid family and medical leave program. This is really important because we see that paid leave increases employee retention and employee morale. If you're able to take time off of work, go do what you need to do to care for your family, or have a child and come back, you have a job waiting for you. So we have seen through research that this has been a really positive policy for small businesses, especially for those micro businesses that don't have the financial capacity to offer essential benefits like their larger counterparts.
And what do you think the impact of a national paid leave program would be?
I think it's going to spur economic opportunities for more small businesses to start. When you're able to tap into a state-run program and take time off, that relieves the cost of burden on the smaller employer to not have to necessarily look at their overhead costs and provide those benefits, but they can actually go to the state option. And that's an opportunity for, if I'm a small business owner and don't have to offer paid leave, then I can increase my wages, I can hire more staff, I can expand my business into different locations.
Thank you so much, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start with a little bit of what we just heard. And we've heard that research into more subsidies for the workforce, whether it's child care, whether it's housing, whether it's Medicaid, will increase employment and opportunities. Mr. Livingston, in your experience, would increasing federal benefits and increasing money from the government going to workers, would that drive them back into the workforce?
No, sir.
You explain to this committee the challenge that you have week in and week out and the conversations that you have with employees about why they don't show up.
Yes, sir. I mentioned that in my statement because their first comment would be they can make more to stay at home. I use this scenario, and we're just good old country folks, and so if you go to an animal park or you go to a Colorado State Park or anything like that, signs say do not feed the wild animals. And the reason why they say that is not because of the safety, sir. It's because you cripple them in their ability to be able to fend for themselves. And the more that we're giving and the more that the government is giving to these people that don't want to work anyway, we're crippling them as we would feeding a wild animal. They're not able to do on their own or make it on their own. They're very dependent on the government, and the more that's given, the more dependent they're getting. And so no matter what incentive you offer, they're not going to come back to work. Work is not the incentive for them.
I want to move back to your construction business for just a second. You did a very nice job of laying out what happens when interest rates continue to go up as a direct result of inflation. Can you talk about the number of new home starts that you saw prior to inflation versus where we are now and how that's affecting your business?
Absolutely. I mentioned also that we averaged 2 contracts a month where we were averaging 5, 6, sometimes 10 contracts a month. We would have 13 houses going at one time. Now, like I said, we're around 2. The inflation and the supply chains issues have caused people not to want to buy a house because of the length of time.
So we heard today that the answer to the housing crisis is more LIHTC housing, people renting apartments that are subsidized by the federal government. Is that going to impact the workforce? Is that going to build home ownership? Is that going to build personal wealth? And is that the right way to get people into the housing market? I worry deeply about the younger generation being able to even afford a house for the first time at the way inflation is driving the cost now. But how do you see competition with subsidized rental versus home ownership?
Again, we're crippling these people by giving them this new home. The jobs are the amount of inflation and the interest rates going up are driving people not to be able to afford these homes or afford the home that they should afford for what they are working. But we're here giving the people that don't want to work a house to sit in, and again, there's no incentive to go to work, as you mentioned, because if the government is paying for their housing and they're paying for their food and they're paying for everything that they do, they don't have to go to work. They're sitting there being handed out everything that they have, and then people like us that are having to work to take care of that is the one that's getting hurt.
Mr. Bergman, you've mentioned how important research and development is. talk about the number of ideas and products that you're working on right now that you would not be working on if you could, when your ability to expense research and development goes away?
Well, right now, our research and development program is driving about 40% of my time, and scientists behind me, and two of them actually in the room with me, and many of our engineers. I mean, we conduct that because we feel we need to, and we need to take the risk to do it. It's so new to me, Congressman, that I honestly haven't considered what I would do if those deductions went away. I mean.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Mr. Chairman, yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Just like to remind all of the members of the committee and also the witnesses, just to speak really close to the microphone so we can definitely try to hear as much as possible. Ms. Moore, you are recognized.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I wish I had as much time as you have so I could go back to the first century when Jesus was born, but I don't. I wish I could ask each of you a question, because you all have said things that are very, very worthy of response and inquiry, but my time is limited. Let me start out, Mr. Chairman, by asking unanimous consent to put something in the record. It's an article from Governing, and it was a study that was done on folks, and I did meet someone here from Clayton County, Georgia. It's a majority black county, and it was a study of 5 years when there was no public transportation in that county, and there was a real nexus between poverty, unemployment, those people who don't want to work, and their inability to work because they didn't have transportation. And so without objection, I'd like to put that in the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Listen, Mr. Chairman, you know, it is so rare that I agree with you on things. I would have to say that in your opening remarks that went on for quite some time, you did make a statement right off that's saying investment in the workforce is what we ought to be doing. And I guess I'm going to ask maybe Ms. Winton, Mr. Livingston, and Ms. Shanklin some questions. If, for example, the government, like I noticed in Georgia is one of the places that didn't expand Medicaid. So that if you make, say $13,900 a year if you work, I don't know how much you pay, Mr. Livingston, people. I don't know whether you hire people full-time. I doubt it in the restaurant business. So if you deny those people, like we're planning to do here in this 118th Congress, have an earned income tax credit that has been, pinned to the change CPI, cut off the child tax credit, which is non-refundable, so you have to earn a certain threshold of money before you can access it, no health care cuts, transportation problems. 50% of Americans are rent burdened, which means that they pay more than a third of their income on rent, which really increases the possibility of homelessness and so forth. So I'm just wondering, if you, Mr. Livingston, could subsidize your employees with these benefits once we cut them off. Do you think that, you said to Mr. Ferguson that we're just giving these people stuff, and I'm wondering, do you provide health care for these people? Do you provide paid medical leave? Do you provide child care for them? Do you provide transportation? These are the things that we provide so that they can work for you. And so I'm wondering if you are prepared in your business model to provide these things for your workers once we cut them off. Yes or no?
No, ma'am. I provide them a job, not transportation.
That honest answer. Ms. Winton, I was wondering, I am so proud of you and your husband. I just had a chance to chat with you in the hallway, how you started it with 2 little babies, your company 26 years ago. They're talking about cutting off all the energy credits. I remember I've lived long enough, I had a birthday a couple of days ago. I've lived long enough to remember my first asthma attack when I was shoveling coal into the furnace. Do you think that the next generation of your company won't benefit at all from some of the clean energy and clean technology, or that we're going to be using the same sort of technologies that we use today? The $180 million is coming to Georgia. Do you not want any of that money?
So I am going to answer first that I think that health care is a right, not a privilege, and that since I had probably 3 employees, I started providing health care. I would love an off conversation, because I know I don't have time, but I think that there is bipartisanship around health care. And
how about clean energy, since my time is...
So clean energy is a long conversation. This is not a yes or no answer. I am totally for clean energy. However, the things that are being done now in the bills don't make sense.
Okay, very good. I just want to ask you, with my remaining time, Ms. Shanklin, could small businesses make it without government work supports?
I'm going to go back to that statistic that I mentioned in my testimony, that the majority of businesses in Georgia, 99.6%, are solo enterprises or micro businesses. That is who we're talking about here. They do not have the access to fair competition or providing essential benefits for their employees for whatever reason. What we're trying to say here is that these types of programs, when you have access to quality and affordable health care, you're going to go to work. If you can go to the doctor's office and get your checkup, you're not going to have to go to the hospital 3 months down the road and pay an exorbitant hospital bill. So we're talking about having access to quality services that are necessary for entrepreneurship.
Thank you for that, because I have noticed that Georgia has the highest unhealthy people in the country. So maybe that's why they don't come to work. They don't feel good. I would yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. I recognize Mr. Collins for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess I kind of want to play off a little bit about some of your comments and some of Mr. Ferguson's comments, and also reiterate the fact that in my opening statement I said I don't think we have a tax problem. We've got a spending problem in Washington, D.C. But after listening to the witnesses up here, it sounds like we're going to have a tax problem coming up if these tax incentives are set to expire. And I just kind of wanted to hit off of a few of them real quick, maybe an example or two, or how many people, Ms. Couch, do you have that take advantage of that $199?
I have over 200 clients, and I would say that 90% of them take advantage of 199A. 90% of 200.
And Mr. Bergman, on the R&D tax cuts credits, are any of the machines in here eligible for that?
Yes, I mean, that robot, you walked under a tower. That room is full of machinery that is dedicated to our materials research program.
And I know this may be a simple, crazy question, but would you say people had to put those machines together and got paid to do that?
Yes, sir. Many contractors.
And since that money stayed in the private sector out here, they say floating around 7 times, would have been a whole lot better than you sending that money to the federal government to where they spend it once.
I mean, yes, we spend a lot of local money.
And Ms. Winton, on the 163J, do you have an example for that, or can you expand on that just a little bit?
On the interest expensing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So our sales cycle has definitely lengthened. It takes us anywhere from 6 months to 5 years to work with a customer to sell them capital equipment. And And so those budgets that are put in place, we're basing our cash flow and we're basing our employment, how many people we're going to employ and how much equipment we're going to buy, how much we're going to help the community, what our charitable contributions are going to be, and so forth, based on those budgets. And so if they can't expense the equipment, our budget is going to be pushed down the road, and I'm going to have less money to give to my employees, to their families, for health care subsidies, for the local theater that we donate money to. It just goes throughout the community.
And I think I'd like to follow on that, because so many times small businesses, we show paper profits, but we don't have the actual cash there. And taking away those credits like that, take away your cash. The IRS doesn't take a credit card. You got to send them the cash. And thank you for that. That's good. Mr. Livingston, I noticed that you were talking a little about the R&D credits, the bonus depreciations don't directly affect you. But in your testimony, your open testimony, you said that your supply chain had been affected, where your deliveries were cut down to 1 and 2 deliveries a week instead of on a need basis. And I would submit that that's due in part to because of a lot of the bonus depreciation is being taken away because you can't get equipment. And a lot of these small businesses, especially in transportation, are getting eat up by the IRS because they're having to go back and recoup their depreciation. The other part of that, I would really like to add to what Mr. Ferguson said, is just the fact that when the government gives out programs that incentivize people to stay at home, it directly affects you because you have to match that or better than that to get them to come to work. But you shouldn't be in competition against the federal government to employ people. And Ms. Shanklin, I had a question. I couldn't hear you right. Did you say you were a small business owner?
I said I was not a small business owner. I'm here as an advocate on behalf of small businesses.
So you've never been in small business as an owner?
No.
Okay. All right. You said government programs offset inflation for some families. And I would submit that the government gets that money from the private sector. And if the private sector kept that money, they could sure best spend it a whole lot better than the government. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Byer is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And I really am grateful for you all coming. I've been fascinated by the stories and grateful for them. I specifically want to thank Ms. Couch for making the point that business income is different from business owners' income. I've been trying to make that point for many years. And I love being able to keep the money in the business where we can grow the business. And I also want to point out that all those expirations of tax cuts, they were all built into the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. So please don't blame us for their expirations. And we're trying to extend many of them too. For example, the American Investment Manufacturing Act, which is Adrian Smith and Joe Morelli. The American Innovation and R&D Competitive Act with my friend Ron Estes and John Larson. I haven't looked at the permanent expensing that Jody Arrington is doing, but I like the idea of the permanent expensing. These are all really good things. And with respect to my friend, the chairman, I think jumping from a small group of people, small handful of people that wanted to defund the police, is not fair to make that equivalent to the rest of us, the vast majority who want to invest in the police. So in any case, and then also just for the record, with all the doom and gloom that's out there, and I know there are many people suffering, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported last month that prices measured by the CPI went up 0.1% in March, down from 0.4% in February. We are on our way back to 2.5%. Sooner the better. The job market also brisk pace, 236,000 jobs in March. Now we have unemployment at 35. Black unemployment, which hit an all-time low at the end of the Trump administration, is now at an all-time low at 5%. And the economy has added 12.6 million jobs in the last 2 years, thanks to the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan and the infrastructure plan, et cetera. But that's more than President Bush, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Trump. None of them got anywhere near 12 million jobs. So let me move on finally. For the record, I've been an employer. I am a small business person. first ownership in 1978. So for 49 years, I've been managing people, thousands of people. And I can't remember more than one or two people that didn't want to work. We start with the assumption that everybody gets up in the morning wanting to do a pretty good job. So, Ms. Shanklin, I can come back to you. Can you make the point again about why a federal program, not burdening small businesses, but a federal program for paid leave, since we're the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have one, how that would be good for our businesses?
Thank you, Congressman Beyer. Paid leave is an essential benefit that all employees should have. I was not a small business owner, but I have worked for a small business. I served tables for years at a restaurant in my local community. I didn't have access to health insurance. I had to pay out of pocket. And when I took time off, sometimes my job was in jeopardy because I missed my shift. So I bring that back to say that paid leave is a policy that improves workforce retention. It improves job morale. Folks want to come back to work. Folks want to pay their bills. They want to invest in local communities. Paid leave is necessary for entrepreneurship. We heard from this gentleman here that he doesn't offer those benefits. What would happen if there was a state-run program or a federal program that folks could tap into? They would be able to go to the doctor. They would be able to take time off of work and come back to work and not stay at home. So I'll finish in saying that paid leave is necessary for folks to start jobs, for folks to sustain jobs, and for entrepreneurs to really make a difference in this country.
Thank you, Ms. Shanklin, very much. I also want to just add, the first 37 years or something of the family business, we didn't have paid maternity or paternity leave, and we put it in 2010, I think. And it's been really wonderful because it's been able to keep our young women who would tend to have a baby and leave and we never see them again, stay for the maternity leave and then come back. And it's been really good for us. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Schweikert is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know the acoustics in here can be a little bit difficult. And forgive me, it's one of those moments I want to get it off my chest. When we talk about expensing, do understand, to my brothers and sisters, expensing in many ways is a timing effect. Instead of buying a piece of capital equipment and depreciating it over time, you just take it on the first. It's a timing effect. It's not a tax giveaway, because the model basically says you buy a piece of capital equipment, your cycle time gets tighter. I bought one instead of waiting 7 years and then replacing the piece of capital equipment because it's fully depreciated, I might do it next year, and the year after that, another one, because my competition. We were actually seeing in the data models that productivity was going up and tax receipts were going up because we had expensing. And turns out it's the same thing on R&D. Now, we know there's sort of an extortion game, which is sort of insane, because my Democrat colleagues will say they also agree on the R&D, but then give us something. But it's a timing effect. It's not a deduction because it's something you would have just depreciated out. And if it increases the productivity cycle time, workers get paid more. We as a society get more productive. So please, there's a difference between a tax cut and just something where you do improve it, cash flow, and then the capital cycle. Ms. Winston, I actually have a real interest because one of the common themes we're getting in testimony and those things is labor, workers. For you have someone knock on your door. What does it take for you to train them, get them in part, but how available is that talent to you right now?
So right now you're looking at a facility that's a great example because I have 2 open machinist positions and I am struggling to find people with the right skill set. So right now in manufacturing, we have a lot of open jobs and we're going to have even more in the years to come. But unfortunately, we have a mismatch of skills. And so here in the state of Georgia, I'm proud of our technical college system. I'm proud of our apprenticeship programs, the different things that we're doing. We're committed as a company. We have interns and we have apprenticeship programs. But in answer to your question, I'm having a really hard time with people coming in the door who think they're qualified for the position, but they're not. And that's due to the 10 years that we stopped investing in the technical education of our country.
Mr. Bergman, same sort of question. Talk to me about, because, look, I'm from the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. And so, we're one of your big competitors, with CNC, though I was looking for your 3D printers. And the biggest complaint I get from them is actually not access to credit, it's access to people who will just show up and then learn the profession.
Well, that's true. I mean, it was worse. After COVID, we really struggled to fill the skilled jobs. And my human resource manager was working longer than anyone else in the company, just sifting through resumes. People weren't showing up for interviews. It was really bad, but it has gotten better. One of the things that we had to do was recalibrate our benefits and our pay, and that helped. Going to flexible work schedules, that helped just make us more competitive.
Well, in many ways also, you just answered for our witness from the left. Leave and those things are just a function of salary. I'm going to pay you less if I give you these benefits. That's just, and you actually had to recalibrate your benefit package. Obviously, it probably affected salaries or long-term to get people. It's just one of our concerns is we can get some of the tax code right, we can get some of these mechanics right, but we're actually seeing all up and down, whether it be the construction industry, someone who can run a CNC machine. Where are the people? What's happened out there? We know there's something very uncomfortable in the data on young males sort of disappearing from the labor force. And if you ever have an insight, please send it our way, because it's something we're all struggling with of what's actually going on in our society. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today in the Peach State. I'd also like to thank the witnesses for being here today. As a small businessman and job creator for over 34 years before coming to Congress 4 years ago, I can truly understand your pain and what you're experiencing. As my friend Congressman Collins said, I feel like I should be at your table instead of mine. There's a famous country song and a great line that comes from that. The interest rate is up and the stock market's down, and it's not getting any better anytime soon. We just heard this morning that the interest rates are going up again to try to tame the inflation. Americans are hurting. Bad fiscal and monetary policy has fueled record high inflation, in turn causing the Fed to raise interest rates in an effort to curb inflation. The Fed will continue to raise interest rates until we get our inflation problem under control. That means more pain is on the horizon. Regardless of what anybody wants to say in a political environment, when you talk to the economists you read, they say this is going to go on at least into 2024. At the earliest, will it go away then? When interest rates rise, businesses pay more in interest and the cost of capital rises. This makes it harder for businesses to access capital markets to expand and grow. And just when you thought that the current market conditions for investment couldn't get worse, it comes at the perfect storm. A necessary provision allowing companies to deduct interest on the investments they make was limited even further, increasing the tax cost on investment and pushing up the cost of capital that will minimize capital formation and now into the future. The stricter limitation on businesses will fall on the American worker in the form of lower wages and unemployment. Ernst & Young projects just this past month that over the next 10 years, if the interest limitation on deductibility is not repealed, 467,000 jobs will be lost, employee compensation will be reduced by $23.4 billion, and the GDP will fall by more than $43.5 billion. That was Ernst & Young, not somebody on Capitol Hill. Everyone on this committee should be concerned about the long-term effects of the stricter limitation on interest deductibility, as it makes the U.S. less competitive in the global marketplace, as we've heard from our witnesses. 26 OECD countries use earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, otherwise known as EBITDA, as an earnings stripping limitation, and zero countries in the OECD use the new U.S. EBIT-based limitation. Friends, this is not just an economic issue, this is a national security issue. How can we expect to compete with China when we have made investing in the U.S. more expensive and less desirable? We must keep borrowing, investment, and economic growth here in the United States because the incentive to borrow, invest abroad is more attractive than ever. I'm happy to join my colleagues, Adrian Smith, Joe Morelli, and Brad Schneider, in introducing our bipartisan solution. Ms. Winton, as a manufacturer, can you explain to this committee, and I know you've talked about this a lot, why and how the increased limitation on the interest deductibility and the rising interest rates are harmful to your business and how it has impacted your decision-making process as CEO?
So, my business is not any different than the government. So if you look at your government budget, the increase in interest rates is causing havoc, right? It's taking away from other things that you need to be spending that money on, increasing debt. But unlike the government, I can't operate in the red, and my customers can't operate in the red. So we have to cut somewhere. So we have to look at where we're going to cut. And so idealistically, I'd like to say it's not capital equipment and investment, but that's not true. So you have to have your workforce. You have to have certain things. So basically, you're going to cut sales and marketing first, which is the worst thing to cut because it's what helps you grow, and then you're going to cut capital equipment. And as a capital equipment manufacturer, that hurts me, which hurts my people and hurts the economy at large in my community.
I just want to say, and Congressman Collins alluded to this about being a small business person. I tell people in Washington, D.C., you never have been a small business person until you're the last one to get paid. You pay everybody else first. You all wouldn't be sitting here talking to us if you hadn't figured out how to survive and take care of your people. My Democrat colleagues up here that have never been in business would like to think that you abuse your employees and somehow they still want to come to work every day. It's just a falsehood. And somehow they think it's also the solution to the federal government compete with you and your ideology. My colleague next to me has been a very successful businessman for a long time. He just told you how he became successful. He adapted and adopted new policies along the way so his people were better taken care of. And I applaud him for that. That's a true business person, somebody who's understood that it's not the federal government's responsibility to take care of your employees. It's you as a business person. And you will fail. And it is not the job of the federal government to help you survive if you abuse the benefits you give your people and you don't compete. That is the true nature of the American dream of the free market capitalism, is that you take care of your people or you don't survive. And we shouldn't protect or take care of those business owners or business leaders who don't take care of their people. It's the one thing you can do differently. And when the federal government gets involved, they disrupt the free market principles that made this a great nation. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Hearn. Recognize Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and thank you, Ranking Member Del Bene, and thank you all for being here and for allowing us to come to your beautiful state. It's gorgeous out there. I really appreciate hearing all your stories. It means so much as an American to hear how we make the American dream happen and the challenges that you have and how Congress needs to hear these challenges, because so many times when you see the policy that comes out of Washington, D.C., you wonder if they've ever had to sign the front of a paycheck, if they've ever had to pay everybody else first before they could take anything home. Ms. Couch, thank you so much for being here today. Your experience helping the small business clients to navigate the difficult IRS is incredibly important. Republicans in Congress have attempted to simplify the tax code, especially in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, so that we also know that there's more work that needs to be done. In the American Rescue Plan spending package that the Democrats forced through Congress, there was a little noticed provision which substantially lowered the threshold for taxpayers taxpayers to receive the 1099-K form. I have worked on this for 2 years, fighting to repeal this. We even managed to get the IRS to realize and acknowledge that imminent disaster they were about to cause because of the implementation, so they held it off for another year. And you know, if the IRS decides not to collect more taxes, there's a reason. It's sort of like sugar. Once you get a taste of sugar, you just want more and more. Say I'm downsizing my house. I've got a Peloton sitting in the garage. I've got 2 or 3 sets of skis that my kids outgrew, a drum set, all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to have a garage sale. Does that make me a small business? Gosh, I do still have the receipt for that Peloton, so that can kind of complicate it a little bit too, but the drum set and skis, I want to move them on to somebody that can use them. Can you explain the burden that taxpayers will face because of this threshold change?
Yes, so the threshold change is really talking about receiving payments through companies like Venmo and PayPal, and how when you sell your Peloton and someone marks that as a business transaction when it really is not a business transaction, it's just a garage sale, you're going to receive a 1099-K that you'll have to report on your tax return saying that you received $800 for your Peloton. Now you can deduct against that the basis for the Peloton, but you probably don't have the receipt for the Peloton or proof that you purchased it still in your possession. So there's going to be a lot of taxable income that's going to have to be reported on tax returns that is not valid or just to report.
It's really hard. Mr. Bergman, thank you for hosting us here. Our very first hearing was in West Virginia, and I know the work that you all went in your company to provide us with this wonderful setting. Thank you so much. My family's in their 3rd generation of a business. I married my husband, he was in the Army. We came home, he went to work at 6:30 in the morning, came home at 10 o'clock at night and talked to his dad for an hour. I understand. Our sons are now in the business. And it was interesting a year or so ago when my son made the comment, we had an employee come up to us and say, I think you put too much in my paycheck. That's directly from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and it was really great to hear. Overall, how has your company been able to grow and invest in itself due to the tax changes in the TCJA?
Well, the accelerated depreciation was really important because we knew we had goals in mind of capabilities we wanted to add, and when that act was passed in 2017, I think this room had 7 CNC machines, and we had 0 3D printers. And since that, I think by the 2021, we've doubled that to 22 CNC machines in this room, as well as some other experimental machines and processes that I don't think we would have tried.
Well, in my home state of West Virginia, we have a lot of expensive, capital-intensive industries because of extraction and manufacturing. And in the benefits of the TCJA, such as the interest deduction, immediate expensive, and ability to deduct the R&D, we're going to expire. What would you say that would mean for your business and your employees?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to let anyone go because I believe in my workforce, right? We would have to live with lower profits, and we would have to adjust our plans. First we'd have to see if these are permanent, but if they come a reality, then we would have to adjust our strategy accordingly.
What you do in business. I yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Ms. Tinney is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. DelBene, and all of our members for being here, and to our Georgia hosts, we really appreciate it, and to you for being here, and also for giving up, Mr. Bergman, a day of manufacturing production. We appreciate that. Look, I'm a small business owner. I I'm one of the few lawyers, former lawyers on the panel. I was a partner in my firm, thought I knew everything, like most lawyers do, until I actually had to run our business, which was really challenging. I ran a dying business in a dying economy while I took care of my son, who was very young, and my parents, who were in their final years and very ill. So I know what it's like to run a business in difficult times and in a difficult economy, which one of the most difficult economies in the nation is the state of New York, which is where I'm from. And like so many small business owners, when I got to government, I think there's a great misunderstanding between maybe it's our parties or people who are in business or not, and that's that there's somehow a hostile relationship between employees and employers. And as a small business owner, I can tell you, every one of our employees is like a family member. They're a jewel to us. They're so valuable, and we want to give them everything we can. And one of the things our business in a very rural community did from the very beginning is we provided health care, we provided family leave, we provided 401k, and all the things we could do to be competitive and to give our employees an edge when many of them were farmers and didn't have those opportunities, because we know farmers don't have the access to many of those things, and my family members were farmers too. So I just want to ask you, because I know some of the key things I got out of your, Ms. Couch, I really appreciate your discussion of 199A. I've been to hundreds of businesses or heard from hundreds of business owners, almost entirely small businesses in my community. And I don't know where the 4% figure Ms. Shankling is coming from the 199A deduction, but almost every one of them took advantage of it, and 100% of them, regardless of party, told me that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act were the best thing that happened to them in 30 years as business owners in the state of New York. So we had to do that through, unfortunately, reconciliation, which is a tough process. But I wanted to talk about the concept of mandating family leave, health care, and the impact that has on the voluntary aspect of being competitive, and maybe ask you first, Ms. Couch, if you would, as I like the incentive-based program, because guess what? Now that we have mandates on health care, on family leave in our state, all of our health care is much more expensive, our family leave is more expensive, and we have a harder time getting employees to work. So I wondered if you could just very briefly from a tax perspective, tell us your insight on that.
So to mandate the family medical leave, I see so many small business owners who give this benefit without being mandated to do it, and to put an additional burden on small business owners, by mandating them give certain amounts of time off, is just unrealistic and a burden that some business owners will not be able to withstand.
Mr. Bergman, you don't have a family leave policy mandated by your state, but do you have one with your company, and what would be the impact on that?
I mean, it's been already said that family leave is important for young families that are having children. But I'm convinced that the marketplace, when you're trying to hire and grow, the marketplace is going to take care of itself. And so if you do not offer a competitive benefits package and a good, safe, attractive place to work, you're going to go out of business. So I don't know how much extra guidance we need. It feels like it will take care of itself, or you won't survive.
Thank you. Ms. Whitten, you said, unlike the government, I cannot operate in the red, but I'd like to allude and kind of put this together with what Mr. Collins said. The government is the taxpayers. That's our money that goes to government, and the government decides where our money goes. Don't you think that, like Mr. Bergman, that maybe a competitive, sort of a hybrid model would be better than mandating some of these issues in your workplace?
I think it's on an issue-by-issue basis. I don't think that we can talk about them all at once. I can say from personal experience, we talked about I have offered health care, and it was always increasing in double digits. But when Affordable Care Act passed, I know that last year I had a 38% increase in my health care costs, and I can't continue to sustain that. So my fear is, if you mandate, what does that mean as a small business owner? Does that mean that I'm going to be paying even more than I'm paying now?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think my time has expired, but thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to the witnesses.
Thank you, Ms. Tenney. Ms. Fishbach is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all of you for being here today, because this is a critical part of our job, is to be here listening to folks from across the country, not only from our district, but hearing people from our district and understanding better as we go back to D.C. And, over the past 2 years, we've watched inflation, we've watched more supply chain issues, we've watched the workforce issues, and then that was on top of the pandemic. So, and Mr. Livingston, I know that the restaurant industry has had a harder time recovering than a lot, and I won't say anyone's completely recovered, but it's a harder time. And you were asked some very pointed questions about your employees and how much you paid, and I wanted to give you an additional opportunity to respond to that, because I think that I waited on tables for years during college and when I was younger. I probably couldn't handle it anymore, but there's a lot of aspects to the restaurant industry that I think that should be pointed out when you're talking about your employees, and I want to give you that opportunity.
Thank you very much. You just made mention listening from the witnesses, and I greatly appreciate that, because I thought this was a hearing and I wasn't allowed to be heard by Ms. Moore a while ago, because I was kind of insulted and rudely cut off. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to explain that, and I appreciate it. Our employees, one thing that was mentioned earlier was transportation, and again, it's not my part to get people to and from work. They have 2 feet, they can walk. But the problem with this is, I have offered benefits. Yeah, we're not mandated by that. And these gentlemen, thank you for your comments. I appreciated those and listening to that. But because we're not mandated, we tried to offer insurance to our employees. We tried to offer benefits. We tried to offer those things that have been mentioned. But the problem was that you have to have, in a small business or any insurance, you have to have at least 3 that participate. Well, out of our 30 small business employees, we couldn't come up with 3 because they all had assistance from the government. So the people that do need it, the 2 or 3 people that could have used it, were not allowed, or we could not sign that up because we didn't have enough participation to go forward with that. But in my community, I try to give back to every one of our employees, and I may not have a paid leave program, but what I do is I offer money to them. If they are having a baby, I go to the hospital. I offer stuff for them. I do feed them. I feed their families. I do all of those things that I can. I support their small children in ball and their school projects and their Girl Scout cookies and all of those items. I do all of that as a small business owner to give back to community. So all of these big time things that we're talking about right now, that's saying that we're not doing as small business owners, or we're not giving back, or we're not having these opportunities for our employees. We give them opportunities, and we do have all of those things that we have, but we just don't have the capacity or the support from the government to be able to afford all of those things. When your inflation's skyrocketed and your price of goods are skyrocketing and your menu price of food has gone up, you don't have the money in return to sit there and pay all of these benefit programs to your employees. But you do try to help out of pocket that ultimately comes directly from our family's pocket to support them. But thank you for listening to me. I appreciate that.
Well, yes, sir. And I will tell you, I appreciate, my district, biggest town is 50,000 people, so I'm from a rural area. And you're not just a small business owner, you're part of the community. When you start talking about your supporting the Girl Scouts, you're the guy who is writing out the checks for the Little League when they come and ask for a sponsor. Right. And so it's not just those kinds of things that we talk about in D.C., because good ideas don't always come from D.C. A lot of them are bad ideas, and you are all part of your community, and you know what works, what's good, what's helpful, and I have such a hard time just saying that every neat idea in D.C. is going to work, because it's not. And we need to be out here talking to you because we need to understand what's going on in your communities. And so I appreciate, Mr. Livingston, that you are, and all of you, that you're part of the community, that you are writing that Little League check, you are buying those cookies. So thank you for doing what you do, because you support your community and you make it a better place to live. So I appreciate that, and I am out of time, so thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Fischbach. Mr. Moore is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And for our host today, thank you for setting up this awesome setting. We appreciate it. It's like a lot of facilities in my district in the northern part of Utah, places I love to go and tour and visit. So last fall, I wrote an op-ed that was published in a magazine or in a publication. And while I'm sure that all of you have read it and have it posted on your doors from some obscure brand new freshman congressman from Utah, I will just quickly summarize what I try to communicate in it. And I think it's a fundamental problem with Washington is in 2017, you had majorities in the White House, House, and Senate for one party, and in 2021, you had majorities in the same for the other party. And they did big pieces of legislation. And what I tried to communicate in that was there you can actually see just the difference in philosophy. And in 2017, I sort of articulate the Tax Cut and Jobs Act as an effort to sort of empower workers. You reduce taxes, you try to empower workers. And in the American Rescue Plan, what you're doing is trying to empower programs. And here's the point I want to make. Is I've dug in, especially to this committee, and as far as Congress as a whole, there are voices that are there for themselves and they just want to sow discord. As far as our committee, from what I understand, Republican or Democrat, we want a strong economy, and that is an absolute goal. And there's a difference in philosophy about how you go about doing it. I am obviously very supportive of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. If I was in Congress, I would have voted for it and voted against ARPA. That's obvious. What I wanted to highlight was something, Ms. Winston, you actually brought it up, and then I'm going to ask you, Ms. Couch, a question. It's not easy to do big pieces of legislation, and we have an opportunity right now to identify from research and from data, well, what was good? What's good? Well, what's happened that's been good? And I would say things like the R&D amortization. We need to recognize that historically it's been good, and we had to do that in order to pass that bill. There's a lot of amazing things that happen. Growth of the economy, our revenues have never been higher, and we need to work together to be able to get that done for the American people, because it impacts every industry that you could possibly imagine, save a few, right? But it is a huge impact, along with some of those other provisions. I love being from Utah for something you said, Ms. Winton. Our state legislature, a supermajority in the Republican Party, provides tuition opportunities, free tuition for high school juniors and seniors to go to to go learn and get a certification at a tech school. And they take that and they have a better job when they go to try to earn their 4-year degree. It's a great way to be a productive program within a government, right? And I love that you brought that up, how we've lost that over the last few decades, and we're trying to do that. Encourage you to take a look at it, and talk to folks about it. Hopefully you can be doing something similar. Ms. Couch, NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, is a great organization, and the thing that I love most about it is they actually do a really good job of collecting data. And as a recovering marketing researcher and strategy consultant, it is the best way to understand consumer research. It is the best way to build a strategic plan going forward and actually solve big problems. The NFIB has a report that says that business optimism has declined for 15 straight months. I would love your opinion on what steps we can do and what we can take to boost confidence of small business in communities and help them feel more excited and positive about future prospects. Because consumer attitude indexes, we go off of those. Those dictate a lot of things within our economy. Could you just share what do you need to feel better about the potential over the next few decades?
To start, it would be great to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
I did not plan that. I was not set up for that.
The 199A, I know I've harped on it, but it's crucial, and I think it would give people a lot of peace of mind if they knew that was going to extend. I think that, right now just peace of mind is a little shaky, and with interest rates going up and seeing some of the things that we're seeing in the economy right now, just some stabilization would be a good thing on the interest rates to start with as well. So,
thank you, Mr. Bergman. Anything to add?
Well, yeah, I think you said the right word: stabilization, stability. All Americans have seen ideology in Congress shift from one side to the other. But if you're in business, and you're trying to make plans. Some plans horizons go longer than a term limit. And if you want to start a greenfield factory that might take 10 years to realize that technology, you're handicapped by not knowing what is going to be the ideology in Washington in year 7. And so what do you do to mitigate the risk? You scale it down. And I would just say, as an overall goal, stability would be nice.
Love it. Thank you. You emphasized my point. CEOs think in terms of 10, 15 years, and unfortunately, politicians think in terms of 2 sometimes. And we need to fix that, and we need to recognize that better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Ms. Van Dyne is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate getting out of D.C. When you come there and you have to testify in front of us, and we're, on these tall chairs higher than you, it can be really intimidating. This is more intimidating for us than it is for you, because we're in your backyard. We are in your home, and I think it's good for us to get out and talk to you where you live, and not make you come all the way to D.C. where it's all stuffy and we know what we're talking about, because as you have pointed out, we don't know what we're talking about, and we need to learn from you a lot. Unfortunately, since the Biden administration took office, we have observed a concerning trend of rising inflation, resulting in the average household experiencing additional expense of $10,000 per year. And this economic downturn has further been worsened by a record 24 consecutive months of declining inflation-adjusted wages, leaving millions of families struggling to make ends meet. Moreover, we cannot ignore the fact that this administration continues to accuse small businesses of using a loophole, and to back it up is currently pursuing a $1.8 trillion tax hike, which would primarily target Main Street businesses. This tax hike includes a small business surtax expansion of $650 billion that targets owner-operated small businesses, an additional $235 billion in taxes through an increase in the top individual tax rate for small businesses, and a $77 billion increase in the death tax, which will force family farms, ranches, and other generational businesses to sell assets to cover an enormous tax bill. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit to the record a petition signed by over 11,000 small business owners who agree that their small business is not a loophole.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much. Ms. Couch, in total, President Biden's budget outlines several major tax increases that would add up to nearly $4.8 trillion in new tax hikes on workers, families, farmers, and small businesses, and destroy 335,000 jobs, cut workers' wages by 1%, and reduce our economic growth by 1.3%. Inflation remains the top problem for small businesses. Inflation means that businesses are likely not selling more goods and services, but the prices for those goods and services are higher. And therefore, it appears that their income is higher, but that's not good for the economy overall. So are you seeing your clients report higher taxable incomes as a result of high inflation? And is that one reason for historically high business tax revenue?
No, I'm seeing their gross profit margins going down because of higher cost of goods sold. So that's where the big decrease is. And then to bring it even further down the profit and loss statement, once you apply the increase in overhead expenses, you're seeing another reduction in net profit margins. So no, we are not seeing, the cost of inflation is driving profits down.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. You also work diligently with the IRS. In last Congress, House Democrats gave billions of dollars, which they claim will help improve customer service. Have you seen an increase?
Absolutely not.
What have you seen?
I called the IRS yesterday about for a client. I was transferred 4 times, and I held for over 2 hours. I held my entire drive to Atlanta, which was almost 3 hours. So, customer service is terrible.
Well, we continue to see complaints of the IRS agents continuing to work from home and not being responsive, and I think you basically just explained how that actually is happening and how that's affecting small businesses. For the past 2 years, worker shortages have been fueled by Democrats' misguiding spending policies. Has your business faced worker shortage issues, and if so, what impact has that had on your operations? And Mr. Livingston, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Yes, ma'am. We have faced, as I said in my opening statement there, that we sent out 92 W-2 forms this year with the average of keeping 30 employees, and so we have our turnover rate is unbelievable on that. Again, I go back to the fact that so many make a statement to me that they can make more working from home, which is almost unbelievable for how they do that. I think most of us wish we could figure that out, but every morning we're strapping on our boots and we're going to work. So yes, we have been affected by that. We've been affected by in the home market also with not having subcontractors to show up to get our houses done in an amount of time. And when we're working on deadlines and those type of things, those are costing us money in the long run, because every day that we're over off a contract, we're out of pocket money. Same way with the restaurant. Every day that we can't open the doors because of lack of employment, cost us sales. And no matter if we're closed or not, the bills continue to come in daily. So yes, we've struggled in that.
I appreciate it very much. My time has expired. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Dyne. Mr. Feenstra is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you, Ranking Chair, also for being here. Thank you, each one of you, for your witness testimonies and all you do. I mean, you are the people that actually make this economy tick in our great nation. I'm from Iowa, and I am the second largest ag district in the country and probably one of the largest manufacturing districts in the Midwest. And just like you, we're fighting every day to survive. And when I say that, there's things that go bump in the night. One of them is 100% bonus depreciation and 179 depreciation. I look behind me and you look at the robotics, you look at the CNC machines, plasma tables, laser cutters, you name it. All right, these are high cost pieces of equipment. All right, and to fully depreciate them all at once is a game changer, literally a game changer. It was noted by the Tax Foundation that the economic impact of 100% bonus depreciation made permanent will increase 100,000 new jobs, along with higher wages and higher GDP. And we get that. We understand that. So my question to several of you, Ms. Couch and Ms. Bergman, Mr. Bergman, thank you for all you do, but what does this mean if we can create some permanency in bonus depreciation, 179, and even 199A, which you talked about, Ms. Couch? How does that look to you when you start forecasting your business, buying equipment, and all this other stuff?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in that permanency is stability, and it allows for my small business owner customers to make decisions that are not just for next year, but that might be for 5 years from now, if they know that a tax provision such as bonus depreciation, Section 179, will be in play at that time.
Yep. How about you, Mr. Bergman? I enjoy seeing everything, and I'd love to hear, what do you need from us to make sure you're successful, that you can hire more employees, that you can grow our economy?
Well, I think, the idea of a permanent Section 179 type, bonus depreciation would be great, because we do have, even though we're a small company, we do have a technological roadmap. We have understanding of what it would take to gain a competitive advantage. And we could plan much better knowing where that's going to be, no, not just the next 2 years, but the next 7 years and 9 years.
Yep, I thank you for that. And Ms. Winton, you hit on something earlier, and I'm grateful that you hit on it. All right, it's called research and development expensing. And you noted that China is at 175% of expensing. Close to 200, right. And why are they doing this? Because they get it, right? They get that research and development creates and builds an economy, right? Obviously, we're slow on the draw. We're slow on the uptake here in America, right? Can you just talk about this a little bit, how important research and development expensing is, and in essence, research and development, and how that affects your business as you move forward?
So 2018 was pivotal for us. That was our huge growth as a result of the tax reform, and we gained a customer that tremendously helped us. We shipped 6 machines to factories all over the country, and that same manufacturer came back to us, and we just shipped 6 more machines to them, and in total really 12, because the machine was an automated cell, and part of that automated cell was a brand new machine for us. So they did R&D in their factory, and as a result of doing R&D for their products, they needed new machinery, and then that came back to us having to build new machinery and develop new software and a brand new machine from scratch. So the R&D was, the expensing comes from us. It also comes from our customer. So it's a long supply chain of the need for that R&D.
Thank you for that, Ms. Winton. I just want to point out how important it is to these businessmen and women what bonus depreciation 179 R&D expensing is, and we got to make them permanent. All right, that gives you it allows you to forecast, it gives you certainty in what you're doing. All right, but I also want to say this. All right, when you look at the global world, when you look at the international economy, what's happening? All right, they want to pass, and we're pushing down Pillar 2. This administration is. The OECD is trying to make punitive damages to our companies, right? And then you have the book minimum tax of 15% that is also going to crush our companies. I mean, I don't understand what's happening with this administration and what's going on with how they want to crush our economy. So I'm here to tell you, I will do everything for you to make sure that we're growing our economy and that we have a tax structure that will benefit you so you can grow. Unlike you, small Main Street businesses up and down Iowa, they need our tax structure that works for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feenstra. I now recognize Ms. Nicole Malliotakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you all for your testimony today. I think it's going to really help us craft the legislation that could help support small businesses and manufacturers like you. I'd love to start with Ms. Winston.
Nicole, could you get a little closer? Kind of hard.
Get much closer. Ms. and I spoke in the back earlier, and we were talking, you're from New York City, New York State, rather, originally. You came some time ago. But as you know, most of Georgia's new residents are those fleeing, sadly, New York City. So I would love to hear from you what your friends and neighbors are telling you about the reason they're leaving the Big Apple for the Peach State.
It's funny that you said that, because that conversation happened yesterday. I was talking to some younger folks, or younger than I am, that left New York City, and they said they can't afford it. They said, I parked, I bought a sandwich, and I'm not really sure what else I did, but it was $150 later. So I think it's the cost of living. You know, we've talked a lot here about inflation, and the South, just, Atlanta has definitely gone up, housing has gone up, everything's gone up since I've lived here. But we've had a lot of people moving from the Northeast, especially during COVID. I think you're seeing a fleeing from California. You're seeing a fleeing from especially New York. I just hired and recruited. I'm happy for it. I recruited our new chief operations officer out of Massachusetts. So it gives us an opportunity to recruit talent from other parts of the country.
Do you say that to call Bill de Blasio the U-Haul salesperson of the year for a reason. But going back to what you're saying here, because it's true, when government has these types of programs where they're giving money with one hand, at the end of the day, they're really taking it with another, because it's driving up inflation, it's driving up taxes, and that is exactly what we're seeing some of these proposals that the Democrats are saying here today and back in Washington would do. We've seen that story firsthand in New York City. We believe, Republicans, that we should have a pro-growth tax policy that helps, small businesses and now big businesses grow, create more jobs, and stimulate the economy. We get tax revenue from that, not by hammering people over the head each and every day with taxes and fines and fees and regulations and burdens. You mentioned that the President Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act helped stimulate sales. You saw the sales of machinery from your business skyrocket. And sadly now, with the inflationary policies of President Biden, you're seeing energy costs and lending costs go up, which is further hammering our young people trying to purchase a home. Senior citizens trying to pay their electric bill. Trillions in increased taxes, as Biden is now proposing, would only make it harder for you to reinvest, expand, and create jobs. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I think something that you guys don't see yet, because you don't see it in your statistics, is that there's a huge backlog in manufacturing right now. So especially in capital equipment, folks, some people have up to 18 months in backlog. And we're seeing a slowdown in inquiries. So that's going to catch up, and you just don't see it yet because of the supply chain.
And how do you guys feel about hundreds of billions in tax credits, your hard-earned tax dollars that are in this Inflation Act that passed in December, that would be made available to companies in communist China? How does that affect you?
My competition is all over the world, and when you talked about Section 179 before, I think, sorry, bring it closer to me, that was a big thing, because manufacturing is all about the known. We don't like the unknown. We don't like during election years. We don't like instability with tax structure. And so during the time period with 179, we would see that Congress would pass the laws closer to the end of the year. And when you pass a law in October for that fiscal year, guess who gets that business? China, because they're importing and they're storing their equipment here. And as a manufacturer, you need it, you're going to buy it, and it's ready.
All right, and with 30 seconds left, want to ask you a question, right? And this may seem basic, but would you as a business take a percentage of your revenue and give it to a competitor so they could invest, so they could expand? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, so we shouldn't be doing it with China, right?
No.
What would happen if if your business operated without a budget for 7 years?
We wouldn't be in business. And I can just tell you really quickly, we were at a trade show, and I had some folks from China, and they just wander around your booth just looking at everything.
And what would happen if any of your businesses spent more money than you actually took in?
We wouldn't be in business.
And that's what I'm afraid will happen to the United States if we keep going down the route we are. And thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kerry is recognized.
So for the witnesses, I am an Ohio State Buckeye graduate, and I promised my dear friend, Mr. Ferguson, that I would not treat this panel as hostile witnesses. But I do want to say two things. Mr. Collins obviously been here a little less time, but I'm not too far away from him. We've both been in the business side of things. And Mr. Bergman, I got to tell you, I've walked around your facility. I've been in and out of facilities like this my entire life up until about 15 months ago. You guys have really done a great job. Thank you for hosting us. I really appreciate that.
I owe it all to my team.
No, that's good to hear. Now I'm gonna touch on something. I do want to get with you a little bit about how I'm going to sell my Peloton and not have to be taxed on it. But there's a real crisis, whether it's in Central Ohio, which is where I come from, Columbus, Ohio, of affordable housing. And, you know, as we look at Atlanta, we look at Georgia, I know affordable housing, Ms. Whitten, you touched on it a little bit. It's something that we really need to focus on. And we're blessed in Ohio of having a lot of new industry coming into our state, particularly in central Ohio. But affordable housing is something that we just don't have enough of. And I know you find that in the Atlanta area. But just a couple issues that I want to address. You know, Congress, and as you look at this panel, it's a bipartisan panel. And we all come from different industries. We all come from different things. But we're able to work together to get some good things done. And in 2018, Congress came together in a bipartisan way, and we were able to get a 12.5% increase in the low-income housing tax credit, something that was very important for not just, you know, people in my district, but people all over the United States. And it's something that I hope that we'll be able to come together and do again. I know I'm going to jump around here a little bit because I'm the last one to go, so I'm the one that's, you know, keeping us from lunch, right? But Mr. Livingston, am I not mistaken, you were a coach?
Yes, sir.
You defensive coordinator?
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate that and appreciate your service to our youth. I want to ask you a couple questions, and we'll talk about housing maybe another time, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So can you explain how the high interest rates are impacting your construction business as it relates to housing?
Yes, sir. So one, it causes less interest in the people that are wanting to buy a home. As I mentioned earlier, just a 0.5% change in the interest rate changes drastically for us. If we're signing 2 contracts a year or 2 contracts a month, and we're losing out just on $17,000 because of that half drop of interest over a year's time, we're talking $80,000 to $100,000 loss that's coming into our business. That's just on a 0.5% with just 2 houses a month.
Yeah.
And we're not having that interest of people coming in to want to buy new homes because of the fact that their mortgage rate is going to be extremely high, and they're also scared that, you know, the amount that they're getting on the loan does not go towards what the house is actually worth.
Right.
So it's causing them, you know, stress in that, because they know if the interest rates do come down, obviously they could refinance, but still, right now they're not getting the style home that they deserve for the amount that it costs.
And to your other business. And I know, you know, in the restaurant world, I know the profits that you, the margin that you have to operate on. Have your customers regularly seen, and I'm sure you have, but I mean, have they regularly seen an increase in the price of some of the products or the food and the beverages that you have at your restaurant?
Absolutely. It's not the cost of the New York prices by any means. We don't charge $100 for a sandwich and parking. You can get all that in West Point for $5.99. But yes, sir, the increase in the prices have definitely gone up. We have to. But again, operating on a food cost of normal of 25 to 28%, having to raise that food cost, it costing us around 40 to 45% now. Those numbers don't come off of your payroll and your rent and those type of things. Those come off your bottom line as a homeowner.
That's right.
So yes, we've faced that in customers as well.
All right, I'm out of time. Mr. Chairman, once again, thank you for bringing us to Real America. Thank you for allowing people to as I think Ms. Van Dyne mentioned, we're sitting level with you guys. And Mr. Bergman, thank you for opening up your shop. And I'm sorry, we'll let your employees get back to work here very soon. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. I want to thank every member of the committee for taking time out of your schedule. This is time that you would be in your congressional district and that you made it down to Georgia to hear from each and every one of you. And I want to thank all the witnesses for your time away from your job, from your small business, from your families, to invest and to help give us ideas to only make this country better. So please be advised that members have 2 weeks to submit written written questions to be answered later in writing. Those questions and your answers will be made part of the formal hearing record. With that, the committee stands adjourned.